move on to a story of resilience and hope in endometriosis care. Endometriosis is a condition where tissue similar to the lining inside the uterus grows outside of it, plagued Anne Mahero and Elsie Wandera for years before diagnosis. In the following special report prepared by our health reporter Kipto Hilda, Dr. Muteshi Charles, an endometriosis and fertility doctor, expound further on endometriosis and its effects on patients. Currently, there is no definitive cure for endometriosis.
Anne Mahero, an endometriosis warrior and a nurse in profession, had to undergo pain for the longest period possible due to the socialization of pain in the society. With endometriosis, pain became part of her life and hindered her day-to-day activities when she was needed. However, she fights with it till she becomes a warrior.
So I constantly had painful periods growing up, even in my teenage years, particularly in high school. I think high school was the worst. While I was doing my KCSE, I remember it was history paper 2. I passed out, and you bet my principal thought, this girl is not ready for this exam. She's just freaking out. It was terrible.
Through an accident, she finally got her medical report that she had endometriosis.
Funny story. It was a bike accident. I was crossing my avenue and a bike hit me. It was riding from the opposite direction. So what happened after the accident is I developed some pain around my abdomen. And when I went to the hospital, they did an ultrasound. They didn't find anything abnormal in the ultrasound other than what seemed to be some pooling of blood around my umbilical stump. They had a test done on that, a biopsy, and from that is when they diagnosed that I had endometriosis.
Now, up to 10% of women of productive age in Kenya has endometriosis. Often, endometriosis is mistaken for other diseases since it affects different parts of the body, and thus doctors ironically end up treating the wrong diagnosis.
In 2017 is when I had my first chest x-ray, and it showed that I had a collapsed lung. And the doctors were asking me funny questions. They were asking if I had a violent boyfriend, if I had been hiking up Mount Kenya recently, things that would trigger the collapse of a lung.
Ladies suffering from endometriosis live with it 6 to 10 years before actual diagnosis, which end up suffering a great deal. Elsie Wandera, an endometriosis warrior and the founder of Endometriosis Foundation of Kenya, had to bear the pain for more than 10 years.
I started presenting the symptoms for endometriosis when I was 13 years old. I think around 13, 15, between that age, which was the same time that I started my periods. And so it took about 10 years, over 10 years, for me to get diagnosed with endometriosis. By the time I was 26, that's when I knew what I was suffering from.
An endometriosis and fertility expert, Dr. Charles Muteshi, further sheds light on what endometriosis is.
When you look at the womb lining, the womb is the uterus, or where the baby would be, but women menstruate from the womb every month. So the lining cells can find themselves in other parts of the body. And if that's the case, they can cause bleeding and pain, and that's what we call endometriosis.
A chronic pain during menstruation is a key symptom of endometriosis.
I used to have terrible, horrible cramps.
Menstrual pain is often mistaken for a normal kind of pain, but there is a thin line between a usual pain and a chronic and acute pain caused and brought about by endometriosis. Other symptoms include heavy bleeding during periods or between periods, trouble with infertility, bloating, nausea, and fatigue.
Endometriosis can present in variable ways, and it affects different parts of the body. So if it's in the pelvis, it can be around the fallopian tubes, around the bowel, the bladder, or the ovary. It can also be in the chest or the belly button or umbilicus. Those are the commonest parts in which you find endometriosis.
The pain can, however, be managed in 3 ways depending on the type of endometriosis. The treatments include hormonal therapy, where drugs modify the hormonal environment by suppressing the ovarian activities, surgical treatment, where the lesions are eliminated, and through the painkillers. The treatment is, however, tailored to each patient's need.
The treatment of endometriosis is individualized, and what that means is that every patient who has endometriosis is evaluated by the doctor who is specialized, and their treatment is tailored to their needs specifically.
Struggles and uncertainties knocked in Anne's life, and change was inevitable.
Part of the things I've had to change is choosing to live more intentionally, appreciating each day as it comes. I've learned to take more precaution when it comes to the things that I eat, particularly plants or vegetables and fruits that are known to cause inflammation.
Epidemiological data suggests that the risk factors to endometriosis include early menstrual period, shorter cycle length, long and heavy menstrual flow, and reduced gravidity, which is a number of times a female has been expectant. Moreover, some endometriosis cases have been linked to infertility.
Most girls who have endometriosis will end up having children, so their fertility is not significantly compromised. However, there will be a few of them in which, if the endometriosis is so extensive that it's damaged their ovaries or their fallopian tubes, they may have challenges getting pregnant.
However, there is hope for the endometriosis patients brought about by endometriosis organizations in partnership with hospitals such as Aga Khan University Hospital. One of the organizations heavily creating impact on the patients' lives is the Endometriosis Foundation of Kenya, founded by Elsie Wandera. Being an endometriosis survivor, she saw the need of having such an organization.
I felt that I was not getting enough answers about how to manage this condition called endometriosis, and therefore the need to ensure that the women who continue to suffer in silence, that their voices are heard, and that they also get directed to the best care in order for them to manage the condition.
Through the Endometriosis Foundation of Kenya, many endometriosis patients have found refuge and their voices have been heard.
Here we can share our experiences, encourage each other, learn about the symptoms that we have, get more information on them.
The foundation, having a global position, is well represented in the World Endometriosis Organization, having Elsie Wandera, an endometriosis warrior, in the steering committee.
That's again why I was just like, we need to figure what this is, how is it that we live. That was, we were in the 21st century and we still did not have answers about why millions of women continue to suffer.
The month of March marks the Endometriosis Month awareness, where the endometriosis advocacy organizations focus on the well-being of the patients.
One of the projects that we have, but we want to, do a fresh campaign around it, is the EndoBuddy system, where we pair people, women who are part of our Telegram and support group, with someone who is within your proximity, geographically.
Unfortunately, endometriosis patients have to dig from their pockets since insurance companies rarely cover endometriosis. This is credited to endometriosis not being categorized as a non-communicable disease to qualify for a subsidized medication and treatment through the NHIF.
You'll take drugs this month and they'll allow you to take them. Next month, you'll go and get drugs. They say, no, these are hormonal. They were still hormonal last month. But I think sometimes that understanding that, yes, they are hormonal they are hormonal drugs, yes, but I'm taking them as part of treatment of a condition, that is key.
This has caused a great challenge to the endometriosis patients.
If I get a prescription, that says I need 3 months of hormone, suppression treatment, or drugs rather, the hospital will say this is this is not something that the insurance companies will pay, and therefore you have to pay out of pocket. And again, it is not as cheap as we imagine.
A clarion call is now given to the government and research institutions to chip in, fund patients, and find the cause of endometriosis, the cure, and a better way to manage it.
Many insurance covers, or I would say just the healthcare system in Kenya generally needs to give endometriosis a lot more importance, because it's one of many chronic conditions that affect the population.
It takes 6 to 10 years for women living with endometriosis to get an actual diagnosis. Concerns have been raised concerning this chronic disease being under-researched. As this continues, time will tell whether or not the disease will be better managed. Kipto Hilda, KUTV, Nairobi.